Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Inside this box, I have the latest laceless Copa model from the 3 stripes, where at this point, I think it's fair to ask the question, does anybody even care about this style of football boot anymore? Well, I'm here to tell you that you should, because this is easily the best one they've ever made, and arguably one of their best laceless football boots ever. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Adidas Copa Pure Plus, the replacement for the Sense Plus model, a football boot that I personally wasn't a huge fan of, and you might have already noticed that the new Pure Plus doesn't actually appear to be all that different from the model it replaces, and that's because they haven't really made any major changes. All of the change is minor. However, these minor tweaks result in a product that I think is significantly improved and perhaps even more importantly, objectively very good. In my opinion, and spoiler alert I guess, this is easily the best laceless football boot currently on offer from the 3 stripes, and arguably their best effort at a laceless football boot so far, all of which can be had for $280, which is a $5 increase over the Sense Plus. But it's not all positive, because some of the changes that they have made, while I don't think the average consumer will necessarily care or perhaps even notice, there's an argument to be made that what's being presented as new are actually cost-cutting measures. And considering that the price has gone up rather than down, these are changes that you don't necessarily want to see, but when the final product ends up being this good, there's an argument to be made that do these changes actually matter if it's for the overall betterment of the final product? And that's kind of the discussion that I want to have in today's video as I take you through all the details of the new, or I guess not so new, Copa Pure Plus, including how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price in 3 different launch colorways by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And really quickly, if you guys enjoy the brutally honest reviews, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So first things first, the upper. This is going to be the most controversial aspect of the new Copa Pure, not just the Plus, but the .1 as well. Their top end models no longer feature kangaroo leather that has been a staple of not just the Copa Mundial, but the classic Copa series since it was first introduced, and that is no longer the case here on the Pure Plus or the Pure .1 for that matter, where they've now swapped out kangaroo leather for cow leather or calf skin, something that is, in the eyes of many football boot enthusiasts, an inferior type and inferior quality of leather compared to kangaroo. But here's the thing, check out how soft this material is, and if we're comparing it to the Copa Sense Plus that it replaces, while that football boot was kangaroo leather, this, in my opinion, from a feel and quality perspective, is softer and better in every single way, which of course begs the question, do we care about the type of leather or do we care about the quality of the leather? If your answer to that question is quality, then there is no question. Not only are you getting more leather on the new Copa Pure Plus, but the quality and feel of this cow leather is significantly better than the kangaroo leather featured on the outgoing Sense Plus. But that still doesn't answer the question of why Adidas made this change, and I think the conclusion that a lot of people are drawing is that this change from kangaroo leather to cow leather, despite the quality actually being better, is a cost-cutting measure. Automatically, people attribute cow leather with being less expensive than kangaroo leather, and I can't say for sure as to whether or not this is the case. I can't imagine that there's that much of a cost difference, but again, it must be said that the price has gone up $5 rather than staying the same or even going down, which I think a lot of people would probably assume would be the case if going away from kangaroo leather, which in the football boot industry has always been presented to us as being the best of the best and the most expensive type of material to use on a pair of football boots. Whether or not that's actually true when it comes to sourcing material and actually manufacturing football boots, I have no clue. With that said, another possible reason, and this is purely speculation as to why Adidas is straying away from kangaroo leather, is the current kangaroo leather ban that is in place in California. Yes, it's just one state in the US, but it is the biggest part of the American market, and something that I'm sure Adidas, as well as other brands, don't want to continue missing out on. And regardless of what your opinion is on this California legislation, good, bad, dumb, whatever, it's something that could make its way into other states, perhaps into other countries as well. And given that I personally don't think the average consumer really cares if the boots are kangaroo leather or cow leather, and the fact that the quality of the leather actually seems to be improving rather than going down, when and if these laws ever change in other places, Adidas will simply be ahead of the curve. In other words, I don't think the stray away from kangaroo leather is a cost-cutting measure, but more so a short-term and potentially even a long-term business plan from the Three Stripes, where their boots are currently available everywhere. The quality has not gone down whatsoever, which I think is what we as consumers ultimately need to care about, rather than what has been marketed to us over all these years as being the best of the best in kangaroo leather. And when and if this legislation does make its way into other states and other parts of the world, Adidas will now be ahead of the curve. And honestly, don't be surprised if other brands follow their lead. So with all that out of the way, from a design perspective, the Copa Pure Plus does kind of revert back to what was originally found on the Copa 19 Plus, where the leather itself is super soft. It's actually very thin, so when the boots are on your feet, they actually have more of a barefoot feel rather than kind of like a soft padded leather touch. So from a protection perspective, there really isn't much protection to be had. These do end up feeling more like a pair of speed boots in my opinion, and honestly, kind of like a leather variation of not so much the Speed Portal Plus, but more so the Speed Flow Plus, and that I think this is a much better and tighter fitting football boot than what's currently on offer in the laceless speed category from the Adidas brand. Also, the amount of leather is improved compared to the Sense Plus. There's no more memory foam, so you get a much more pure sensation, hence the name, across the entire foot, or at least the forefoot and toe box area where the leather is focused. And then of course, it's still their fusion skin construction, so it fuses, although you can pretty clearly see the connection point by way of stitching, into this kind of stretchy mesh type material. Whether it's a knit all the way through, it's not something that you can really see because they do have this fuse overlay. It ends up looking like the entire upper is leather, not actually the case. There's a little bit of padded inserts through the midfoot, giving you this really consistent touch across the entire foot, despite being a little bit thinner and a little bit less padded through the midfoot than the leather portion at the front. But overall, the boots do have this really nice kind of connected sensation and unified sensation across the entire foot with the way that this upper has been constructed. In terms of all of the fusion fit uppers we've had from the Copa Sense, this to me feels the most consistent across the entire foot, which is a very good thing. As for the laceless system, it's very good, but also very simple. You can see there is some elasticated prime knit across the top of the foot, the stretchiest part being focused in right around the top of your foot, front of your ankle, and you can see there's these little fuse overlays. They almost look like the McLaren logo sitting on top to prevent it from stretching too much, but there are little breaks around it to still give you that little bit of stretch to allow the boot to adjust to the shape of your foot. And adjustability is something that you ultimately do lose out on with a pair of laceless football boots. If you want something that is ultimately going to fit the best and offer the best lockdown, I would strongly recommend going for the Lace Pure Point 1 variation. However, this really does give you that sensation of wearing a pair of leather socks, which I think is what this concept is all about. And I think it executes that concept better than any laceless Copa we've seen so far. From a fit and lockdown perspective, I really think they nailed the shape on this one. And for me, it's probably the best fitting laceless boot I've ever had on my feet. And from a lockdown perspective, arguably the best as well. Moving to the rear, you're going to find that the Copa Pure Plus does maintain the same low-cut construction as past modern Copa models. You have an internal plastic heel counter, a little bit of an extended rear, which is actually nice because it helps with putting the boots on. It can be a little bit tricky given that the laceless system doesn't actually stretch all that much on these boots. And then inside, you'll notice that the Copa Sense Pod heel lining system has been eliminated, thankfully, for something that is much more I would say simple and familiar in that it's a microfiber liner with kind of two sculpted pods at the back that's very similar to what we had on the Adidas X18 and 19 generation of speed boots, maybe a little bit less padded than that. And honestly, I think just having even padding all the way through arguably would have been a little bit better, but in terms of heel lockdown and general comfort, it's a huge improvement over the Sense Plus, and honestly, really snug through the heel, making it feel like the boots are more secure than typically I find with a lot of laceless football boots. So lockdown is great and comfort is good, which I think is pretty much all you can ask for from a laceless product, and this does it as good as anything Adidas has put out up to this point. As far as the insole is concerned, it's fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features this really soft microfiber material on the surface, just like the heel liner, and then it features a single layer of black foam, which is actually a little bit thicker and a little bit more dense than what we've seen historically from the Copa series, and honestly, above average in terms of quality from the three stripes. Which brings us to the base of the Copa Pure Plus, which has undergone a major change coming from the Sense that it replaces. However, you'll probably recognize this one because it's not new. This is the torsion frame sole plate originally introduced on the Adidas Nemeziz 17 that launched, you guessed it, in 2017. So in terms of cost cutting, while there's an argument to be made that cow leather is cheaper than kangaroo leather, I can guarantee you that Adidas saved a ton of money when it comes to development as well as manufacturing by using sole plate tooling from a pair of football boots that came out now 6 years ago. And don't get me wrong, this sole plate and stud pattern is a huge improvement over the Copa Sense. It helps the boots shave a ton of additional weight, kind of putting these into the speed boot category when it comes to feel. However, when it comes to actually cost cutting, the fact that these have gone up $5 in price compared to the Copa Sense Plus, when they've effectively recycled the most expensive part of the manufacturing process in these football boots, is a little bit annoying, and honestly something that I have a hard time applauding Adidas for, even though the end result is objectively something very good. So it's something to be taken with a grain of salt in that I think it's great for any brand to go back and reuse elements of past football boots that are really good on their newer stuff. They're recognizing that newer isn't always better. Sometimes it's great to go back and just use what works. However, when that's not reflected in the final price, I do take a little bit of an issue with that. But feel free to share your own opinions down in the comment section. Objectively though, the torsion frame is really solid. It's got a good flexible feel through the forefoot, nice and solid through the midfoot, and the stud pattern itself, kind of featuring all of these half circle, kind of conical blade hybrid studs, gives you a good amount of bite, but still kind of that freedom to twist and pivot when your foot is planted. And in terms of being suitable for what is marketed as a modern day Copa Mundial, I think a stud pattern like this makes a lot of sense. And again, the general underfoot feel and even the traction feels like a gigantic step up compared to the Sense Plus that it replaces. And then there's the weight, which has been reduced significantly. I think one of the major complaints people have always had with the modern Copa series since 2019 is that they just weren't as light as other top-end models, including competing leather football boots from other brands, mainly in the Nike Tiempo Legend series. Nonetheless, both in a same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with the Copa Sense Plus. They weigh in at 8.9 ounces, the equivalent of 252 grams. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the new Copa Pure Plus, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.6 ounces, the equivalent of 216 grams, a gigantic weight difference between the two, with a lot of the weight savings, I think, coming mostly from the recycled torsion frame sole plate, now 6 years old. But like I said, even though this is technically nothing new, it's a huge improvement over what they were doing before, and now the Copa Pure Plus falls into a weight range that is not only similar to the Nike Tiempo, which is still a couple grams lighter, but also makes it kind of viable as a little bit of a speed boot option. In other words, for the first time ever, the laceless Copa actually feels lightweight. On feet, the Copa Pure Plus feels pretty special. I think there's two main things that I look for when reviewing a pair of football boots, and that is one, and perhaps most importantly, a good quality fit and great overall comfort, which this definitely has. But number two, I like something that feels unique, something that you can't get from any other pair of football boots, and the Copa Pure Plus has that. They feel like a thin pair of leather socks with no laces. It's completely seamless. It feels like something that is perfectly molded to your feet. It's really, really impressive. And while I don't necessarily think they feel like a pair of classic Copa Mundials, which I think a lot of people associate to leather football boots in general, if you're comparing these to something like a Nike Tiempo Legend 9, which in a lot of ways is a very modern pair of leather football boots, those feel significantly more old school than these do. I almost wouldn't even compare the two. These are thin, they're lightweight, they're kind of like more of a barefoot feel on the ball. The leather is more so just soft against your foot and giving you that slight amount of cushion, but in general, the touch is pretty raw. There's no extra grip on the surface at the upper, giving them a slick feel. And in general, they're kind of like a leather take on the Adidas Speed Portal or perhaps even the Speed Flow Plus that came before it. These feel like a pair of speed boots rather than something old school and classic. So definitely something to be aware of if you're interested in a Copa Pure Plus. I know this is gonna be viewed as kind of like a defender's boot or something that's bulky and kind of chunky on your feet. There's no protection here, there's no bulk here. They feel nimble and tight, and honestly, I'm just super impressed. The laceless system does make putting these on a little bit difficult, but because of that, the lockdown and general fit around your foot is as good as it's ever been on anything laceless that I've tried. This is easily my personal favorite out of all the laceless Copa models in terms of fit. And it must be said that laceless boots, they don't really have adjustability. So the shape of your feet specifically will definitely depend on how well or how poorly these boots fit you. So like anything laceless, you kind of have to try them on to know if they're going to work for your foot type. But I think these will work for a lot of different types of feet because of the base shape that they've gone for here. There's just enough stretch to the area across the top of the foot without the boots feeling sloppy on your feet. The lockdown in general feels as good as I've ever felt on a pair of laceless football boots. And honestly, I'm just super impressed. The underfoot feel of this torsion frame sole plate taken from the Nemeziz, again, a huge improvement over the previous model, and that it's just a lot lighter and less bulky in general. From a width perspective, these are going to be suitable for somebody with average width feet. If you had really wide feet, I don't think these are going to be a great option for you. You'll just have a hard time putting them on. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size. So in conclusion, the Adidas Copa Pure Plus is an excellent pair of football boots, with even the negative points ultimately resulting in something that is objectively better than it was before. There's more leather. The leather that you get, despite not being kangaroo leather, is softer than it was before. The lockdown and fit is improved over the Sense Plus. The comfort is a gigantic step up. They're lighter than they've ever been before, and the overall package feels like a lightweight pair of leather socks, which I think is what this concept has always strived to achieve, and this is easily the best outcome with that concept that we've seen so far. While laceless football boots certainly aren't for everybody, if they've sparked your curiosity and you're interested in trying a pair out in 2023, there is no question the Copa Pure Plus should be the one that you go for, because even in comparison to the alternatives from Adidas in the Predator Edge Plus and the Speed Portal Plus, the Copa Pure Plus simply blows them out of the water. You might not like the way that they've done it, but these are really, really good football boots.